Next month, the federal government is set to release thousands of inmates early. 600 of them are from Texas. This is the most from any other state. All of the inmates are serving sentences for drug crimes. Their early release is part of a cost-cutting measure to reduce the nation's prison population. So will the early release help or hurt the state? That's our topic this half hour, and we want to hear from you on Facebook and on Twitter. Joining us live in the newsroom is Fox 26 senior legal analyst Chris Tritico, Fox 26 news analyst Mustafa Tamiz, and public policy analyst Jackie Bally. Good morning, guys.
Good morning.
So what do you think about the inmates being released here in Texas?
Well, before we talk about the inmate release, we have to talk about the best university in Texas.
Let me guess, Sam Houston State University.
Sam Houston State University beat up last night on Incarnate Word. Now, we own the Baptists, we now own the Catholics, and in 2 weeks we'll be paying Abilene Christian, so we will have covered every major religion we will own before the end of this season.
And you're predicting to win that game as well, huh?
Yes, there's no question about that. All right, let's talk about this inmate release. This has been in the making for 30 years. When the war on drugs, we have focused for years and years and years on the low-end drug users, and the federal government had a sentencing policy of mandatory minimums. Those mandatory minimums required a whole lot of people to serve a very long time in prison for small amounts of possession of marijuana. They were the end drug users, not the drug sellers. President Obama has a clemency program that so far he's released 89 prisoners, but this program, when it's completed, will release about 46,000 prisoners from the federal system who have been serving mandatory minimums. Now, Jackie, one of the things that's been criticized about this program are people who are not citizens of the United States, but they will be released from prison, go straight into the immigration system, and be deported.
We would hope, but we've seen through this immigration system that we have, the current one, that doesn't always happen. The Washington Post is reporting that 1/3 of these inmates are illegal aliens. It's also reporting that, contrary to what a lot of us are thinking, that they're low-end users, that some of these prisoners or these convicts are people who smuggled cocaine and heroin across state lines. And usually with that kind of crime, there's a 77% recidivism rate. So we're really looking at a lot of other things besides the low-end drug user, at least according to that source. And so whenever we're seeing, like in Texas, we're accepting 578 people, but Florida is a state that has a second amount, which is at 295.
Yeah, I don't think that's accepting. That's not accepting. Those are ones released in Texas.
In Texas.
Right.
So, well, we have to accept convicts into our community. That's what I meant.
Okay, all right.
So, so the fact that we're getting the largest number by far, I mean, twice the...
Well, so far, yeah.
So far, and 5 times the amount of Delaware, I think that we as Texans should be concerned about this.
What about this? I mean, those of us who practice criminal defense law think this is a good policy because I have seen my entire career low-end drug users have to go to prison, creating a subclass of people who are convicted felons because they were drug users.
Yeah, well, I think it concerns Americans, right, that you're releasing people earlier than you should, and people should get their maximum punishment. The other way to look at it is that you are paying for their punishment. You know, the average cost of keeping somebody in a federal prison is about $30,000 a year. So if you have 5,000 people in there for a year, you're spending $150 million a year. And we're talking about 50,000 people. You do the math, it's in billions. For us to understand that, the next year City of Houston faces a budget deficit. We're going to have a mayor here in our next segment, or a potential mayor here in the next segment, $127 million. Just 5,000 of these people in 1 year would have cost us $150 million. So when you have offenders that are nonviolent, you decide, do you want to raise your taxes? And if you do and want to use your taxes to keep people in prison, great. But if you want to take these people out earlier, because they've already sentenced their time, they're nonviolent offenders, when we're picking and choosing who we're releasing, we're sending people back to the countries where they come from, or do you want to take the hit and pay for more money?
The financial aspect is one part of this, but really this is, in my view, not as much finances as it is the public's changing views about drug laws and the public's changing view of our war on drugs.
Again, if it was just people at the lower level who were smoking pot or doing something of that nature, but there are sources reporting that these people were caught with semi-automatic weapons, that they were smuggling heroin and cocaine. Those are not minor drugs. Those are not minor infringements of the law. There's some people that they're saying who could be on this list who were supposed to be serving life sentences, and now it's going to be reduced, and then they're thinking of they may be released. So it's not just the lower end that we're talking about. If it were, then I think we would be talking the way you two are talking. But those are not the only considerations.
Assuming that the Washington Post has that correct, they didn't put numbers in there. And I'm going to bet that the number of people...
Actually, the numbers I got were from the Washington Post.
I understand that, but I bet the number of people that fit the category you're talking about is very low in comparison to the total 46,000.
It did say the 578, 295, and 253, and it did say a third of them were illegal
No, I
aliens.
understand that. I'm talking about the people that you're talking about who had guns.
But even even if it were low, that's like whenever he says we shouldn't have capital punishment because there's a small percentage of people who may be killed for not
because they were innocent?
Because they were innocent. So I'm saying, and I'm glad you two are laughing, but I think a lot of people agree with me. I'm saying there's a small percentage of people who have committed serious crimes who will be released, and that's a concern.
I agree with that.
For a criminal lawyer, that may not be, but for others, it is.
I'm not disagreeing with that argument, but the policy, I think, is a good policy.
Well, look, whether you agree or disagree with the policy, whether you believe like Jackie we should imprison, right now, when you look at, we imprison 1 out of 4 people that are in jail in the United States. We jail more people than, there's almost 2 million Americans that are sitting in jails. If we keep jailing people away, one, who's going to pay for it? Because we're paying for it, it's almost $30,000 a year. 2, by putting these people in jail, if we never have a plan to take them out and put them back into society, who's going to support them for the rest of their life? So it's very easy to be high and mighty and kind of say, I want people to get the stiffest penalty. I want. But then pay for it. And so I think this is a good way to start thinking back of our drug policy. And instead of just locking people away, for people that have addictions, we have to get them help.
So we got about 10 seconds for you to respond to that part of the argument. What do you do with this people who are going to get released from prison eventually and can't reintegrate?
I think as a mother of 2 teenage sons, I'm definitely a proponent that if you've committed a crime, you need to stay in jail. For those who are not...
Forever?
For those, you need to stay in jail for the length of your crime. You should not be released early. That's the way, as a mother of 2 teenage boys who I'm telling, obey the law, follow the law, yes, I do.